Hey there everybody, this is Caitlin here, and welcome to our latest in the Force of Will Vingolf 3 spoilers. Sorry this video is coming out a bit later today. As you can see in the corner in my clock, I've actually ended up having to record this a bit later on today, mainly because I've actually become a little bit sick this weekend. It's, something that you can't really predict that's going to happen. I was feeling all fine this morning when I put out that first video of my speed draw, which I'm glad that, or speed colour, that I appreciate that a lot of you enjoyed. So I thought I was feeling fine this morning, and around mid-afternoon I was getting ready to record and whatnot, and then literally I was hit by like a massive ton of nausea, so that's why I've been asleep for most of this time and whatnot. So this is me just kind of like getting back to myself. I'm still a little bit kind of like sore, but I'm well enough now to actually record my reactions to this. So here we are now. I'm sorry this video is so late, but this time round we are looking at some of the cards that are from the Grimm Cluster, the Grimm rulers. We're doing a really old throwback here, but we're not at the very, very old throwbacks of Valhalla yet. We're here in the middle tier, basically. Well, kind of in like, now that we've got Lapis Cluster, it's not middle tier now, it's like the second tier. But regardless, we have Grimm, the legendary king of fairy tales, who is sporting this rather dapper purple and white appearance. Like, when I first saw the little preview of this artwork, I could have sworn I thought this was going to end up being like Grimmia, like the fusion between like Grimm and Lumia's like wills and whatnot, because he has this kind of like dapper mask where he's got horns and whatnot, and he's got this massive like fur collar coat, and he's got the spikes, and he's got these gloves and the chains everywhere. He's looking pretty edgy and dapper, might I say, but I'm loving it. I'm absolutely adoring it. He is a 3 cost. He's 2 light and 1 void, 800, pretty nice resonator human. But he has a really neat ability where resonators you control and resonators you own in your non-field zone, so basically in your entire deck, gain Fairy Tale in addition to their own races. So essentially, the idea with this is that you really want to be playing him with either Melium, because he's got a secondary effect if you're playing with Melium, or if you're doing Wanderer, you could potentially run him with Grimm, if you want to do it that way. And then you could basically run anything into it, because Grimm is a bit more versatile in that you can use any colour of will for Grimm, for his decks for Fairy Tales. Melium is restricted only in that he has to pay light for Fairy Tales. So essentially what you would have to do is that you're basically playing any colour or whatnot, because they're going to be gaining Fairy Tale Resonator race anyway, so you'd just be stuck playing light stones if you're using Melium, which, depending on the situation, isn't that bad. But anyway, getting on to the secondary effect. This card gains, whenever this card attacks or blocks, force for 1. This card gains X attack and X defense until end of turn, where X is the result of the roll, as long as your ruler is Melium, the Prince of like Palace, or Melium, Voice of a New Generation. So basically, is like kind of like a really good idea to include him in, say, a Force Fairy Tales build, where you've got him, you've got Pandora, doubling your force rolls, you've got those cards that like deal force, you've maybe got the other Grimm, like Daddy Grimm with his moustache and his long hair and whatnot. So I think he's actually a pretty nice card. I'm not gonna lie, I do like him, and I would like to build some kind of Fairy Tale build with him that incorporates him and maybe a couple of other useful resonators that are kind of handy to include, and we could play them because they get Fairy Tale race, so that's pretty neat. Next up, we have Little Red, Fairy Tale of Air, which is a lovely, sweet card. I really like the artwork for it. It reminds me a lot of when Little Red returned after like her long missing part, when like Little Dread had basically stolen her story and whatnot, and she's back. She's not so little anymore, obviously, but I still like the character. She's a 1-drop wind, 300 Fairy Tale, obviously, so you can pay her for light in the Melium deck. It gains 100 for each wind magic stone you control, and this card gains swiftness as long as you control a non-special wind magic stone. So kind of the best idea for this one is that you're running it in mono wind, which I know a lot of people saying that, oh, if you're running a mono color deck right now, you're not really playing into the meta and whatnot, because most people are doing dual color or even 3 color decks. But I still feel like there is like the opportunity to be able to like do good things with monocolor decks. Like, you don't need to rule them out straight away just because you think that only having one color is just going to weaken you a wee bit. But I feel like this is potentially a good card, similar to the Persia 1-drop that we saw last week. Obviously, that kind of works best with like a mono wind build. So you could include the 2 of them, and include maybe, say, the other little, like the 2-drop little wind we got in Curse of the Frozen Casket, because she's also really good. So I feel like this is actually quite good. So if you play this like turn 1, she's like steadily like going stronger and stronger and stronger if your opponent doesn't manage to like kick her out. So like each turn she's getting buffed, so which is pretty nice. Next up, we've got Lumia, State of Creation, a 2-drop, 400 attack and 700 defense. She's 1 light and 1 void. She's a human. She's got this kind of really neat ability, which I feel like harkens back to her J-Ruler times. As like, I never actually had her as a J-Ruler. I believe I got a box of what was it, Castle in the Two Towers, I think the set was. It's so long ago since I've actually opened my my Grimm Cluster boxes and whatnot. I couldn't even remember the set name there, but I'm pretty sure I didn't pull her. If I remember correctly, the card, like the ruler I got was it Bahamut I got, or was it Abdul or something like that? I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I didn't pull her. But with this card is that when she enters the field, we remove the top card of our deck from the game face down. If your J-Ruler has Lumia in its name, remove the top 3 cards of your deck from the game instead. You may look at them at any time. You may play cards removed by this card. So essentially, this is like a pseudo, however you pronounce it, like a pseudo way of increasing your hand size, but without actually having it in your hand. So basically, you could, since it's light, you could run this with new Lumia, because she's light, and new Lumia is like fire and light. She's another way of like getting extra cards into your hand, and we, as long as we keep her in the field, then we can keep those cards, whatever. I don't know what happens if, say, this Lumia gets removed from the field. I mean, do those cards still get removed from the game or something like that? I feel like they do, and that you wouldn't get them back unless maybe you got another one in the field. I don't know then if that discounts the other cards and whatnot. There's like a couple of these cards that were revealed. So I'm kind of like a little bit confused with how the rulings would work out. I'm sure that is perfectly understandable, like if you just think about it logically, but I'm just thinking it that way, where it's like, what if this Lumia gets removed and then you put in another Lumia? Do you still get to look at those first 3 cards that got removed and whatnot, and blah blah blah? But I still like it. I really like the artwork for it. I absolutely adore the artwork for these cards. It just looks absolutely gorgeous, and Lumia is looking adorable as ever. Next up, we have Scheherazade, the Prophet. She's a 4-drop for 4 win, 900. She is a Wanderer, and she's got like basically one ability. It's when she enters the field, you can put the top target resonator on top of its owner's deck. Now, immediately a lot of people would maybe say, oh, finally a way to bounce Hook, but I wouldn't say that Hook should be the target of what, like, if you're using this card. You would definitely not want to bounce Hook, because then you're guaranteeing that your opponent is drawing into Hook again, and you're giving them another opportunity to play Hook and bounce either special magic stones or your resonators. So basically, you want to target something that you know that isn't really useful for your opponent to play again. Like, because then they're going to be forced to draw into it. So they're missing like an extra draw that turn. They're forced to draw into the thing that you got rid of, and you know that it's not going to be very helpful to them, because you know yourself, like maybe it gave off like a one-time effect, whatever, or they kind of made it like, or whatever effect it gives off, or maybe it doesn't even have an effect. It could be very much a vanilla resonator that they thought, oh, I'll get this out the now and blah blah blah, build my field presence. But you probably don't want to be bouncing Hook with this, because that would be potentially very, very dangerous if they just said, you know what, I've got the mana, I'm going to play it again, I'm going to bounce that Scheherazade, that would be pretty bad. But I think it's alright. Not sure how I feel about it. It's kind of like, it's got the one effect and whatnot. I also like the little flavor text at the bottom that says that the future is one of many possibilities. No 2 things are the same, but there's only one we will see. I think that's kind of alluding into how I can't even say her name. It's so simple to say, but at my locals, we just I call her Sheza, and someone else was calling her Lucasade, and we were like teasing each other and whatnot about how you say her name and how it's not really hard to say her name, and yet some people just were such like bleh, you can't say her name. But I like her. I love the artwork as always, and I feel like that we're going to see more of her in the Lapis Cluster story, because we did see that resonator that looks awfully like her, suspiciously like her. So I feel like this isn't the last that we've seen of her. Next up, we've got the big bad boy. We've got Bahamut, the phantasmal dragon, this beastly dragon who's a 6 cost 1000. This actually reminds me back in the days where long time ago, before I actually started this YouTube channel seriously, or before I kind of had Force of Will on the, included in the channel, I was playing it a little bit, but I wasn't making too many videos about it. I had a build where it was basically the ruler Bahamut, but I ran him with werewolves instead of any kind of dragons or whatnot, because I felt like there's not enough dragons in this game to warrant using dragons, so I'm going to make Bahamut werewolves, and it was kind of fun. It was a little bit of a janky deck, but it did the job. It got the job done. This one has Incarnation, where we haven't seen Incarnation as an ability way back since Adam Brawley, so a lot of people have probably forgotten what Incarnation does, just because we haven't seen it in so long. This was quite a common thing that Cthulhu's had in Grimm Cluster, or even a lot of Fire Resonator has in Grimm Cluster, where basically you sacrifice resonators with the same type attribute, and you could play it in for cheaper. So for example, with Bahamut here, if we sacrificed 3 fire resonators, then we could play this in instead of paying the 6 cost. So basically, the great idea would be is if you could play, say, maybe rook eggs. Rook eggs would be a prime target for this, because then you can also search. And you could also, I'm trying to think of another good one that would be maybe Priscia, like Priscia the Pursuant Flame, because obviously when she hits the graveyard, she's going to deal that 500 damage. So again, you don't really mind sacking her too much because you're getting another effect for incarnating and whatnot. He comes with flying, and when he enters your field, it deals 700 damage to target player or J/Resonator. So another burn one, pretty good to include with the Fire Dragon ruler or whatnot, because, you know, I feel like these two go hand in hand. Maybe they go out for coffee sometime or whatnot, just chill out. Next up, we have Abdul Al-Hazred, Poet of Madness, and he's looking like he's having some kind of trip there with all these portals and eyeballs and teeth floating around. He's a True Darkness, a 600/600. He's a wizard, Harry. I need to just slip that joke in there. He's a wizard. Resonators entering your opponent's field don't cause their own abilities to trigger, which, oof, that is such a good card. I mean, it may not seem it, because obviously it's a 2-drop, 600, and people are saying, oh, well, it's easily removed and whatnot. Why would you even build this? Why would you even include it in the deck? But if you think about it, stopping your opponent from having their, like, enter abilities or whatever, like, their entering abilities don't cause their own abilities to trigger, which is insanely good against, like, hook matchups with Lumia and whatnot. Say it stops things that have enter effects like Lumia, because, like, one of the main gimmicks or whatever that people build with Lumia is abusing flickering their resonators in order to abuse their enter abilities, which, if you had Abdul out, they wouldn't be able to get off, because obviously they don't trigger when they enter the field, which is insanely good. So even if you sideboarded him, potentially, if you know, like, say you sideboarded him, and you know you're going up against Lumia, then you'd want to sideboard him into your main deck, because that's a good way to at least, not totally shut down that deck, but at least to get it, like, you know, under control. Potentially, maybe Fox as well, because obviously it's not going to stop the actual Fox, but it would probably stop a lot of the effects from the Griffins. So basically, it wouldn't trigger their enter abilities. I can't remember what all the Griffins' abilities, or not the Griffins, like, you know what I mean, the Chimeras, like, all their enter effects. I don't know what they all are off the top of my head, because I've not really looked at them in so long, but you get what I mean, where it is very, very handy to have, which I think is a good sideboard card. Maybe not a main deck card. It obviously is very situational, so you just need to make sure, maybe keep it in the sideboard. It's quite handy for dark decks. Next up, we have Cain, treacherous killer of the gods. And he has literally, like, the simplest quote at the bottom where it's just like, yeah, God is dead. God is dead. But he is donning some rather lovely looking leather right there. I'm just, when I think of Cain, I can't help but think of Binding of Isaac now, but alas, he is a 1-drop fire resonator. He has no attack and 4 defense, so sadly he is up there with being targeted by lightning strike, unseen pressure, things like that, which is kind of unfortunate. But he has the ability where you can tap him and it deals 200 damage to a target opponent. So basically he's kind of nice to have in, say, a burn deck where you are wanting to, like, hurt your opponent as much as you can, like with burn damage. So, like, you're running him, you're running lightning strikes, you're maybe running demon flames, you're running Volga of all things, you know. This would be, like, a pretty good in a burn style deck, which, you know, I think is where he mainly belongs, with his, especially with his, like, long flowing mullet of, like, red hair. He could probably hang out with the younger Melgis, and they could have, like, a red mullet club. I think that would be a pretty good club for them to have. Next up, we have Dracula, King of the Undead, and as usual, he's got, like, a dying, half-naked lady on his arm, and he's also got dem abs, but he is a 4-drop, he's got 2 Darkness, 2 Void, 1000, Resonator, Vampire, so obviously pretty good for your Mikage/Rezer decks. He comes with flying, as he does normally, and your J-Ruler gains Imperishable and Vampire in addition to its own races, which is kind of funny, because in a way, like, I feel like with this, there's maybe going to be, like, a phase where obviously by the time Alice Cluster rotates out, we are no longer going to have access to cards that are going to grant our J-Rulers all these symbol skills or whatnot, because we can't just, like, as easily give them, say, swiftness or imperishable or flying and whatnot. So I think for Dracula, in, say, a dark build or whatever, where, or even just, like, another build, like, maybe it's a dual color you want to splash in with Valentina or something like that, it's a good way of giving our J-Ruler imperishable and Vampire, so it opens up to a lot of possibilities of kind of deck types. You could possibly run this and make it, like, sort of like a maybe like a pseudo vampire build with some like color support from different spells and whatnot. It's pretty useful, and I like how he's flying because I feel like darkness needs a lot of good flyers and whatnot. Plus, you know, he's a heavy body for 1000 for a 4 cost, so he is pretty nice. And potentially, if you're maybe running like say Water Dark, you could run this with Xion and you could bring this into the field and whatnot. I mean, it's not got like a great enter ability, but it's also got a good way of getting out 1000 body in for cheaper, which I think would be pretty nice. And I like his little quote at the bottom where it's like, the strength of the vampire is that no one wants to believe is real. It's all mystifying, and you've got like a bat in your face and all that. So I quite like this card actually. Next up, we have Alice, Dimensional Traveler, aka card that is confusing the heck out of people and is going to be a pain when rulings come around. Well, mainly if like people don't understand the ruling or whatnot. It is a 3-drop, it is 1 water, 2 void, 500. She is a wanderer. She's looking nice with her little suitcase, but she comes with the ability that while you are searching your deck, you may play this card from your deck. If this card would be put into a graveyard from your field, put it on the bottom of its owner deck instead. So I'm probably going to hurt my own head trying to explain this properly, because I know a lot of people were saying that in terms of like, they were relating it in terminology to Magic the Gathering, but obviously I don't play that card game, so I'm not quite sure how the terminologies go and whatnot. Basically, if there's ever a point where you are searching your deck for something, so say like, I'm gonna like quote a few things where let you search your deck. Like say Rook Egg lets you search your deck for Fire Resonator. The Butterfly Moonbeam thing that lets you search for Resonator. During that search, if you have the will open, then you are able to cast this Alice, but you can't cast it for free. As far as my understanding is, obviously, is that you can't cast it for free as long as you've got the Water and the 2 void while you're conducting that search, and you pay that, you can cast her from the deck, essentially. She doesn't need to be in hand. That's whenever you are searching through your deck, so for, say, a spell or a Resonator or something like that, and you have the will open, then you can play it. I don't know, like, why this is such a complicated thing. Maybe it's just because of the way it's worded and whatnot, but I'm not too sure. And also, like, her little quote at the bottom, "Oh, you found me, huh?" I'm not quite sure who she's talking to. I wonder if, like, she's maybe talking to Lapis, or she's maybe talking to Blazer or something like that. I'm not too sure. She looks too happy to be talking to those guys, so potentially not. But I like the artwork of it. It looks really nice. Imagine, like, an artwork, or maybe not an artwork, like a playmat featuring every single version of Alice we've seen so far. They probably wouldn't even fit on the same playmat, to be honest, but I think that would be pretty. Next up, finally, we have a really big callback all the way back to the Crimson Moon fairy tale, one of the very first rulers. We have Snow White the Avenger. Now I'm just thinking of like Avengers Assemble, or like she's going to be part of the Avengers. Don't worry, Snow White and all the fairy tales and whatnot, they're going to become the new Avengers. She is a 1 fire, 1 light, and 1 void, so she's 3. She's 800 Resonator fairy tale. She comes with precision, and this card gains first strike as long as your life is 3000 or less. This card gains swiftness as long as your life is 2000 or less, and this card gains 400 as long as your life is 1000 or less. So basically, the more health you are losing, the more buff and better this Snow White is getting. And she is just looking so creepy and so wonderful. I absolutely love her. I love how the colours and whatnot like blend in so well with the tones of her brown hair into like the red of the apple and kind of like the peachiness of her skin and whatnot, and then it blends in so well. It just reminds me so much of the original artwork, and I absolutely adore it. And I love how her little quote at the bottom says, "Revenge is sweeter than any apple." I absolutely love this artwork. It looks amazing and I adore it. So overall, I am pretty happy with these Grimm Cluster reveals for Vingolf 3. I've probably been talking for a lot longer than I meant to talk or whatever, but, you know, I've just been reminiscing on days gone by of all these old characters. This isn't the last of the Grimm Cluster characters, I believe, because we've still got some more from Grimm Cluster to see, and a few more from Alice Cluster to see. So next week, it is going to be Valhalla characters, and, I'm really interested to see those, mainly because I don't know a lot about the Valhalla characters themselves. I've only really seen artwork of them because I've got the Force of Will art book and whatnot, so I've only really seen artwork, so I'm very curious to see which characters they've picked. I know definitely Loki is one of them because they kind of previewed artwork of him, and I'm pretty sure Kronos is one of them because he's the guy conducting this ruler all-star battle and whatnot between the dragons. So I'm very excited to see those. So until next time, guys, I will see you all later.